Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. At this time, I will call this City Commission meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. on July 27, 2023. With that, I will ask for roll call.
Mayor James,
Here.
Vice Mayor Ambrose,
Here.
Commissioner Grunder is absent, Commissioner White,
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
All right. With that, we will stand for an invocation, and we will follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask, if you will, that you all join in with me with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I thank you all. Our next item is the approval of the agenda. But before we do that, I have a request before me from one of our commissioners to move item number 3 and number 6 up to item number 1 and number 2, and let the others just fall in place. Number 3 up to number 1, number 6 up to number 2, and then just follow the others.
Does,
Madam Mayor, City Manager, doesn't 2 and 3 have to go in consecutive order?
Yeah.
Actually, we had, today, there was a request that we didn't need to move it around anymore.
Don't do it?
Yeah, sorry about
Okay.
that.
Okay.
but still move 6?
No, we don't have to move
Don't
any
move
of them.
anything.
Yeah, right.
Okay, then leave it as printed, and I will entertain a motion, and we can put my sheet aside.
I make a motion we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, it has been properly moved and second that the agenda be approved as printed. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Agenda approved 4-0. Our next item is approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda minutes for August the 13th, 2023 Commissioner meeting.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and second that the consent agenda for the minutes from July 13, 2023 Commission meeting be approved. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Consent agenda approved, 4-0. Okay, we have no special presentations. We have no unfinished business. So that we will ask for citizens' request and comment for issues that are not on the agenda. Please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please.
David Lynch. I gave each person on the dais a piece of paper. Let's read together the parts that are underlined in red. Irrigation nudges the North Pole. Groundwater removal can alter Earth's gravitational axis. It's important to realize water is heavy. When it moves around, it's going to affect Earth's rotation. Large-scale irrigation can also affect local and regional climate. When we had the joint city-county meeting, there was a woman from the county that was in charge of water issues. She spoke and she said that the average new home that is built now has irrigation and it uses about 400 gallons of water each day, whereas previously homes only used about 100 gallons of water each day. I would think that with the number of new homes that are being built in this area, that would be considered large-scale irrigation. When the commissioners approve a new house, they are affecting the rotational axis of the earth, and through that, they are contributing to climate change. Moving on to a different subject, I would like to remind the commissioners that alcoholic beverages kill 400 people each day.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else, I will close the citizen comment period, and we will move on to our next item under new business number 1. Discuss, consider, and act on mural application for the Educators Mural Hearts of High Springs.
Mayor, I would like to speak to this one.
All right.
I'll wait till Kevin gets the mural. So this is the proposed mural from the Heart of High Springs. Y'all have seen it before. It's the Essie Mae Williams Kessett and Thomas Pop Dieterman mural. And Kevin, will you go to the next slide? This is the proposed location in front of the old school. The Heart of High Springs has said that they would do the landscaping and make sure that it is maintained. And I think there's one more, and that's a picture of the landscaping. Staff reviewed this to see if it was met our regulations for the Historic Preservation District and our mural ordinance. And based on the Historic Preservation District and mural ordinance, it does meet city regulations, so staff recommends approval. However, the plan board, they recommended denial 4-0. They stated they did not think it was appropriate to place on city-owned property and suggested finding an alternate location. They were concerned that it would block the view of a window. I've since talked to people at the Heart of High Springs and was told that it was moved far enough away that it wouldn't, and that the plan board was also concerned about it being located where Pioneer Days shootout is generally located. However, that's one day a year. I think that we could find somewhere to make that work. So staff is recommending approval.
Comments, commissioners? No. No? Comments from, I'm going. Comments from the audience?
Good evening, Commission Board. My name is Andrew Miller, for the record. I had a chance to attend the Plan Board meeting last week where they denied the mural being placed at the museum, and I suggested to them that Lee's Daycare would be a perfect location. I spoke to Ms. Keisha, the owner of Lee's Daycare, and she would be more than glad to house the mural at the daycare. She requested that a mural of her father and mother be painted on the other side of the daycare if she houses it, because they are the founders of the Lee's Daycare. I reached out to Gerald Clum, who did the lovely mural of Mr. Otto, and also did the cheer mural of the Heart of High Springs Walls Dog event, and he is more than willing to be the lead artist for the project. Commissioner Williams stated in a previous meeting that his only disappointment with the mural festival was that the murals lacked representation of the African American community, and I feel like this is the perfect solution to home the mural that we already have and also get another mural for the African American community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I spoke previously and said that Doris Richardson was a prominent educator from High Springs. And she worked for 50 years in the Alachua County Public School System. Her last position was principal of Hidden Oak School. So I suggest that the commissioners keep Doris Richardson in mind.
Thank you.
As most of y'all know, my name is Brad Riddle. I'm a resident of High Springs, and I do sit on the plan board. I think most of us that were on the plan board, we love the mural. We think it needs to be put in another location. And the one major thing that I want to bring up in regards to the mural, if you picture that wall behind y'all, and you go 3/4 of the way down, or to where the thermostat is, that's 24 foot, the width of the mural. You're stepping up about 18 inches from there up to the floor, all right? According to the specs, they're gonna build this, is supposedly gonna be on aluminum frame. It's gonna start 36 inches off the ground, and then it's gonna go up 8 foot. So that gives you a total of 11 feet. Now, I went inside the building, I looked out the window, and based on the location, I don't know if y'all had that and where these individuals were standing, it blocks the view of this building, it blocks the view of the railroad car out here, but it takes away a lot back there, and I just think it's an inappropriate place to put it. And yes, the Pioneer Days, the shootout could be relocated somewhere else, but I hope y'all take that in consideration, blocking the view. And when I measured it, I measured where the land is eroded, and so taking that tape measure and going up to that window, that's 8 foot, 3 inches. So best scenario I can come up, you're gonna lose 3 foot of blockage with the height of that mural. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
My name's Shannon Scott. Just the concern people have said about the Pioneer Days shootout, if that's an established tradition, something they've done for years, I don't think these should be forced to relocate. That's something they've already been doing. You have this new mural, you should just find an appropriate place for that instead of making them alter their tradition that they've done for years now.
Thank you.
I think that the shootout would still stay and it'd be in the general vicinity. It's not relocating the festival. It would be just maybe moving the shootout to either a different location or just move it a couple feet north, south, east, west. Just it's a big site. I think it could still be held at the event.
Anyone else?
Hello, Chrissy Swilly. Just want to say that I feel that this is a great way to start beautification of that building, and what a better place to recognize Mr. Diedemann and Ms. Gassett. They were great educators there at that building, along with a lot of other individuals in the city of High Springs. And I think it's a great way to honor both of them, but again, a great way to start a beautification project of that particular building and possibly even increase the traffic in that building, whether it be rentals, whether it be the Historical Society, or even our festivals that we hold there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Commissioner, okay.
Thank you for that input. As far as the shootout goes, since I've been in High Springs, that shootout's been all over town. So it hasn't been there for years. CSX used to bring a train in, and they used to rob the train and have the shootout with a real train. So you know, the traditions are only recent that it's been there. The windows are a concern. So there are, I don't know whether you have it in the slide deck, Kevin, but there were some photos that were a part of the application that show some people in the yard. So they actually show the left and right of what the group was intending, which are farther out. They're not up against the building. And the way it was envisioned being diagonally placed, it would kind of parallel the sidewalk that goes into the building. But it's placed in such a way that it's shadowing the addition to the building, not the original school. And the addition, the original windows wouldn't be blocked. And even being so far out from the building, it'd be minimal, but that addition to the building is uninhabitable right now. It's not finished space. You can't look out the windows. You can only look out the windows in the finished space. So until we come up with money to finish off the addition, the windows are kind of a moot point, but even still, the idea was it would come out from there. The landscaping that's in the proposal, the people that worked on it, as I understand it, included that because the thought is the mural won't last forever. So at some point, the trees that are planted with it would become lasting, memories of the individuals when the mural was no longer to be there. And that yard used to have trees. When I moved here 21 years ago, there were a number of very mature trees in that yard that provided a lot of wonderful shade for that school. They all died, and we're left with that open field. So to the citizen's point that it might be part of the beautification or a start, I would agree with that. And lastly, we could tuck it away somewhere else. Not only were they educators, they were both commissioners, and we're in a civic complex, and I think it'd be a really nice nod to both of the individuals to have some place of prominence where they can be recognized. So I still like the idea of it going there. There's already a mural there on the building on one end. And if the commission wanted to lower it, that would make sense too. So it's not so high. The idea was just to bring it up a little bit. But anyway, that's my thoughts.
Anyone else?
So have anyone measured this, how high this is gonna be?
I think
This is gonna place, who gonna place it there?
Well, the Heart of High Springs would, but staff can go out there when they do it to make sure there's no blockage of the windows.
Because while I'm looking at this in the diagram here, it's not, I don't think it's gonna be in front of those one as well. It's being used now, but while I'm looking at the picture here, it's gonna be kind of catty-cornered to where the old youth center used to be at. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, and kind of catty-cornered, and y'all gonna bring it out? We really need somebody to speak on this behalf, but if I have to get a better understanding. But I see Heart High Springs are not here.
Answer some questions if need be.
So what would be actually height of the sign?
Well, I think.
Can
Sean
you put your
Coles.
name on the record for us, please?
Yep, Sean Coles, board member of the Heart of High Springs. So my understanding right now, and I think this is all something that we can discuss if there's some, if we need to change it a bit, but I think it was 18 inches, is that correct? I don't have the paperwork in front of me, sorry.
The application says the mural would be approximately, start at 36 off and go up 8 feet.
36.
I'm sure the group could adjust that. That's an
Yeah,
arbitrary number.
Absolutely, we're totally negotiable on that. I mean, that's not something that's set in stone. So we'd be happy to work with city staff to make sure that they're happy and the commission is happy with the height and not block any windows if that's the concern.
Well, the other thing about it is if it goes up and people don't like where it is, before you put the landscaping in, you can always move it a little bit. If there's, you can all go look at it, make sure you're okay with it, and if you're not, then we can come back up here and figure out exactly where we need to move it a little bit. But staff will work with them to make sure that it's not in front of the windows right when you walk up to the school.
Correct.
To your point, Ashley, in terms of that comment, could we not get a drawing that was to scale so that we would know? I mean, I see the gentlemen who are standing out here in the window, but it doesn't give me any idea of scale. And this sketch here is lovely, but I don't think that this is to scale, because if you look at the one figure that is in here that has a scale on it, it appears to me that the entirety of the installation will be a maximum of 10 feet out and 40 feet long, based on that drawing right there that has a scale. So without having a drawing that's also to scale showing the location of the mural, I don't think we can ascertain whether or not it's going to impact the windows or not. I guess the one question I have, Mr. Coles, is to Mr. Miller's point, what would be the objection to bringing this to the Douglas neighborhood to go on a private building? Did they want one and not get one, or I'm just trying to understand that progression.
Well, I don't think I think from the last commission meeting, we were still going in this direction from what we understood from this.
Let me speak.
It's 24 feet.
Let me speak on that. I don't think that would be a good location for that mirror. I just don't believe that would be a good location. The reason I'm saying that is because Mr. Demon never taught over there. Ms. Gasson never taught over there. I don't think that would be the appropriate building for this mural. But if Mr. Lee's daughter want to put some over there, that's Mr. Lee's daughter. But this is not appropriate for that daycare center over there. I think this is the most appropriate place because both of them, he was the principal there, and also she taught there. So I think that'd be the most appropriate place for it. And I'm pretty much with you. I need to see how tall it's going to be. Give me some facts.
So it is 30 to 36 inches above ground and then 8 foot high. So that's approximately 11 feet high by 24 feet wide. However, as the Heart of High Springs stated, they're willing to make it lower to the ground. So if you go up 8 feet high and 24 feet wide, I think you could go 1 foot to 2 foot above the ground, and that'd be 9 to 10 feet high. You need to go a little bit off the ground,
Yeah, you got to have to go, yes.
like drainage if nothing else.
So are you saying that we can't ask for a drawing to scale?
You can ask for anything you want.
Okay.
I'm just answering the questions based
Okay.
because
And
people
then
are saying-
what about the idea that you had, Ashley, about putting it on the side of the police station that faces the school? That one wall, that's kind of a sad-looking wall. I mean, if this were a preferred location and the daycare owner couldn't get it down to her location, is that an alternate location? Because then it wouldn't occlude anybody's vision from the schoolhouse, the old schoolhouse.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I think that we weren't going in that direction because from the last meeting, we thought this is where we were going, and it seemed to be agreed upon, so.
But the Historic
with all due
Preservation
respect,
Board
we-
denied it. They said no, 4-0. So now that's come to us, and we have to use, I mean, I think it's respectful for us to listen to them, too.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, if that were a proximal location, close, still so people could see it coming in and out of the schoolhouse, would that be a reasonable alternative?
Yeah, at this point, I'd have to go back to the board and discuss it. I couldn't answer that tonight.
Would you be able to ask the board if they were willing to consider the daycare as a location?
I think at this point, we're not looking to go to something as extreme as a whole nother location. I thought we were moving forward with this general area. It seemed to make the most sense. It seemed to be voted on, so we didn't put any energy into thinking about a different location. And again, I don't think tonight I'm in a point or a place to be able to give you a yes or no answer, Madam Mayor.
just to keep in mind, if it is put on the location that Commissioner Whites is talking about, keep in mind that hopefully the police station, we will get a new one day. So then at that point, it would have to be relocated if that place is considered.
Right. Yeah, that's right. We did have that discussion, so.
There's also talk about it going at the current school, where all the kids are now. And
Yeah,
Commissioner Grunder isn't here tonight, unfortunately, but he also agreed back in December that that would be a good location. His kids go there now. And I don't know if the school board would be amenable, if anybody reached out to them. It's a highly traveled area, so it would get a whole lot of visibility there. And I would think that, it may be of interest to the Heart of High Springs to do something in tandem with the school board. That'd be great press, to be working with them as partners. If they were amenable. I have no idea if they would be.
Right. I think that Madam Mayor, our thinking behind this mural was to be able to share it with the public, right? So the idea is to be able to have it in a space that's open to the public, which the school would not be.
Public school. It's pretty public.
Generally,
There's a lot of people
anybody
there.
visiting High Springs is not going to the public school, right? That's also an area that's somewhat sacred, you know? The general public or tourism isn't going to the school. Am I
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the landscape plan looks like you would place some tall landscaping plants or bushes behind. So you wouldn't be staring, if anyone was looking at it from any certain perspective from behind, they would see the foliage is the
correct.
goal.
That's correct, right. And as Commissioner Ambrose stated, this is, you know, the foliage is going to be everlasting, whereas eventually the mural will probably not be there unless we consider redoing it in 10 years or something. So I think, as another citizen pointed out, having foliage there, it's only going to help this building and bring a lot of energy to that part of downtown. So I think that's part of our goal at the Heart of High Springs, is to spring energy into downtown and educate the visitors that are coming here. And I don't know that we would see that. You know, I don't think we're necessarily pushing visitors to the public school. I think that's kind of our vision, is to try to help
I more
downtown.
thought about that because that's where the kids are now. You know, I mean, there's a plaque of Pop Biederman at that school. You know,
Right, so there's already one there?
he's,
Perfect.
well, there's a plaque, not,
Understood.
you know,
Yeah.
something big and that everybody can see, but, you know, I just thought that it would be really helpful for the current kids who are there to understand, you know, both of their legacies.
Sure.
Then they would see it. I always figured it would be kind of a cool project that you could do with the kids together, you know, and they'd have some skin in the game, but, you know, I brought that up last year, so.
Anything more, Madam Mayor?
No, this
Just a minute.
is where I'm going. If there's some kind of way, if they can come back and show us the actual location, the actual height, will it cover the ones? I think that's pretty much what the plan board concern was. It was going to block the viewing. If y'all can bring us something back, showing us a detailed scale of how you're going to do it, how high it's going to be, I'd be more than willing to. 'Cause I think it's a perfect place for it, myself personally, because it is a historical area, and both of those, they taught over there. But I need to see something, instead of just saying, we say yes, and then you might do this. I want something definite, say, this is how high it's gonna be, this is what it's going to be, and then I can be more than willing to vote yes on it. But until now, it's too much in the blind.
Understood. Yeah, I don't think that's not a problem. If you know, obviously, we were going to work with city staff and whatever it makes sense, but we have no intention of blocking the window. So yeah, we're happy to do that.
I think that would be helpful to all of us in trying to come to a final decision here. But at the same time, I also think the wall there that Commissioner Rentz mentioned over on the police building would be a suitable spot for it as well, because you can also view it from there. So it's a choice of following what we have and getting to look at the additional information that you're going to provide to us for us to make a final decision on it.
Okay.
All right?
Sure.
Okay, we'd appreciate that.
So then, Bishop, you want them to bring us back something with something in that location and both locations, or just the one?
I think I would like to look at both.
Okay.
Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the current mural ordinance restrict placing murals on city-owned property or buildings?
Well, I don't-
Didn't the commission have a discussion about that when we were talking about placing one on City Hall?
I was still thinking,
On city building, or city,
I don't believe so.
well, we pretty much said no when we was talking about the fire department, and there was another building, I think it was, oh, no, the school. Yeah, well, I was thinking just gonna do the same idea, but just place it in front of the walkway.
right,
On the same frame?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Freestanding.
I was just trying to understand.
Yeah, it would still be freestanding, need the space.
Because I don't want nobody up under that, or walkway there, with all the asbestos and all the rest of that good stuff over in there. and
And
ugliness.
briefly, Madam Mayor, if I may briefly on
Yes.
that point to clarify, the restriction is, the only restriction on sort of what kinds of lands it can be placed on, what kinds of buildings it can be placed on,
Yes.
are that the owners have to consent to, so it can be placed on commercial, it can be placed on public buildings, it can be placed on residences, as long as the owner presents the application. So in this context, the city of High Springs said, we'd like the Heart of High Springs to present something to us, to see where this is, and so that's how we got here.
And can you clarify for me, with the Historic Preservation Board unanimously denying it, then where does that put us? Do we just not take that into consideration, or how is that handled?
Well, the way that
Can I take that one step further? Because I was at the Parks and Recs Board where they unanimously voted for this, for it to go on Parks and Recs property.
Are
So
they they're not in the ordinance though, right?
I don't know if they're in the ordinance or not, but it is part of their governance.
I'm
on the
pretty
Parks
sure
and
they're
Recs
not.
Board, But it is in their governance as Parks and Recs Board for things that happen within parks and things along those lines. So that was their recommendation to put it there, and then it goes to the Historic Board at that point.
No, then it came here.
So-
Then it went back to the Historic Preservation Board.
Correct.
So the mural ordinance has stipulations that it's not like the other things that go before the historic board. It's not like the other buildings and those type of things, that after it goes to the historic board, it comes to the commission. So that's what's in the mural ordinance.
The planning board acts as a recommendation and an advisory board in this context. So whether they advise that you accept it or deny it, it always comes before the commission for you all to review.
We need to table this, and they need to come back, and they bring us back with whatever. So do I have to go through the historical board all again, and just come back to us? Okay. Yeah, just show me some measurements.
You got it. No problem.
I make a motion, we table this until brought back to us.
Second.
Properly moved and second that this item be tabled until we get some additional information on it.
Hi, my name's Steve Tappanez. I'm on the board, the Historic Board and Planning Board. And I think the main reason that we didn't like the mural where it was going was because we didn't have a rendering of it. This whole thing with us and these murals has always been that we don't have a rendering, an exact scale to what they are, exact drawings of what they're going to be. And that's one of the main reasons that we look at it like saying, it doesn't belong here because we don't know how big it is. If we're talking about something the size of that wall behind you, going up in front of that building to where they're saying, me being in my business, I'm telling you, that's covering those windows. And that's the main reason that we voted 4-0 on that. And I just wanted to put that out there, and so you guys can take that in consideration. I do think they need to supply a rendering to scale of what that's gonna look like in front of that building, because that is a public building and belongs to the citizens of High Springs.
Yes.
So that's the way I feel about that, okay?
Thank
Thank
you. All right. Next item.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling all those in favor of tabling the mural application at this time, respond with aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, we will table this item. Do we have to come up with a specific time?
It's not advertised or anything,
So
so
no
when they're
problem.
ready, we'll put it on the
Whenever we
agenda.
get what we need.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 2. Discuss, consider, and act on Springs Garden Village Development Agreement. A developer's agreement between the city of High Springs and how you say that word?
Trinacria? I've always wondered that too. I just read it. I don't say it.
All right.
So if I can speak to this, Mayor.
Yes, you can.
So as you're familiar kind of with our process, when we do projects that are a little larger, we typically try to enter into development agreements. And the reason being so that we can have higher standards. That's what's in our ordinances. And so if they want to be good neighbors, they typically agree. And in this case, they did as well. So to give you a rundown of the development, and Clay will when he talks about the PD more, but the main overview is that it's a 38-unit development with minimum 1,000 square feet duplexes on 3.71 acres within the proximity of Northwest 176th Street and Southside Court. And the development agreement calls for city water and sewer, 5-foot sidewalks, enhanced subdivision entrances, increased landscaping, native vegetation requirements, a 35-foot buffer along the west side and 10-foot buffer along the northeast and south sides, and increased guidelines for architectural design. They are, again, above and beyond what is required by city code, so staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Commissioner comments?
Madam Mayor, I think it's important that we make the distinction that addressing the developer's agreement does not impact zoning.
Right.
And I think that's important for folks here to understand that it's completely separate.
Right, it's just for if the zoning goes through.
Right,
Then you
right.
have the extra layer of protection. If it doesn't go through, then this doesn't even matter.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Taking a look at this, and having driven around the property, I mean, you drive around the property, you can see into it easily 40, 50 feet. So when it says there's gonna be a 10-foot buffer, at least as it's currently landscaped, that doesn't protect anybody on any side, because you can totally, you're gonna see it. So I guess a question about the density and whether or not it's designed to hide the structures after, say, 12 months, it would be kind of, I'd be interested in what the developer's thinking when they say buffer. I know I have industrial property in Newberry that borders a residential district. And there are residential homes right behind where I park all my portable sanitation trucks. And the buffer we have there is a plant called Viburnum O. I've never read it. It grows like you wouldn't believe. They're big leaves. It's evergreen year-round, has bees every spring. But I can't see the houses, and they can't see us. And the actual buffer is only, I mean, between their fence line and where the ends of my trucks are, is only about 6 feet. So you can do something with a buffer of 10 foot. I'm just curious if we should be asking if they're gonna do something that's more dense, you know, that type of thing. And actually, I'm really concerned along, you know, the road, and we'll get to zoning issues. But I'm more concerned about the exit that goes out the back right into that residential district. We've got the one off the side by Tumblemania, which makes sense. And I know the front slopes, and there's concerns about that, but was it even an option to have one entrance from the front off of 27 and then one off the side instead of having that development empty into a city road, which obviously, I guess, we could, when they come to actual plating, we could say, you need to repave that road, your sidewalks need to go there, you need to do these things. I get that, because it wouldn't be able to stay in the same condition it is. And something could happen to that. I mean, that's C2. I mean, it could be the backside of a bunch of stores. You know, so I don't know that apartments are the worst thing to have go there. I'm just curious about that entrance, and maybe staff or the customer can weigh in on that.
So with, like the Dollar General that went in, DOT denied the 27 access to that road because there's a side road next to it. We had a similar issue with the church down 27 as well. if you remember when we went back, and they had to come in off the side road down there as well. So DOT stance is if there's an intersection within so many feet of where they're wanting to put the entrance, and I think it's either 250 or 500, they will not grant access to their road. They want it to come off a side road.
Do there need to be two?
Typically, you want 2 points of access in and out, but one can be an emergency access.
Depending on the type of occupancy that's going in there.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioners? All right. Any comments from the audience?
The applicant for this application and the rezoning. So I do have a presentation for you and got some updates even from last week's plan board meeting to address some of the issues. So we are in full agreement on the developer's agreement approach and trying to have conditions that are very clear for the city to decide the quality of the project. So we're fully in support of you moving forward with that, but I'll be happy to give you a presentation on the project itself anytime that you would like it.
All right, Commissioners. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I've got a PowerPoint if you don't mind bringing it up for me. Thank you. I'll try to be brief with my comments and then answer any questions that you have. So this project is called Springs Garden Village. Planned development is a site-specific PD zoning for this property. And as your manager indicated, this is a 3.7 acre property. It's located on South Main Street. It does abut the Dollar General to the south, residential neighborhood to the east, and commercial and industrial properties to the north and to the west. This is located in the city's urban services area and the traditional city area in your comprehensive plan. So it's an infill type development. There's development on all sides. So it's an area that your comprehensive plan is trying to guide development to happen as opposed to more urban sprawl type pattern. This is zone C2 commercial, and as one of the commissioners mentioned, C2 allows a very wide variety of commercial uses, pretty high intensity commercial uses, high traffic uses, and residential in certain instances. So this proposal is to go to PD just for residential uses with a master plan and conditions for development that would be associated with it. This application has been prepared to be consistent with your comprehensive plan policies. The mixed-use designation in the comp plan for the city allows 12 units per acre of residential density. So this project is proposing less than half of what the comprehensive plan land use density is that's allowed on the property today. I have some maps that'll show you that in just a moment. This is the zoning map today. As you can see, R2 zoned properties to the east, and C2 properties, commercial to the north and to the south, and industrial properties to the west. And so the proposal is to rezone this 3.7 acres to PD, again with the site-specific standards and master plan that goes with it. This slide shows you the zoning master plan that is in the application submittal. I'd like to just walk you through the basics. The PD zoning plan is a master plan. It's a conceptual plan, but it definitely lays out the rules of what's allowed and where. So really the property is broken up into three colors as you see. There's the gray, which is essentially like the internal driveways and parking areas. The yellow, which is the areas where the residential units would be located, and the green, which is almost 40% of the site, would be landscape buffers, common areas, lawn, stormwater areas, etc. The height maximums proposed to be no more than 2 stories, no more than 30 feet in height, which I think is actually less than the single-family zoning height standards in the city of High Springs. So these will not be particularly tall buildings at all. They can be 2 units attached, or they could be just a 1-unit building, but no more than 2 units can be attached, no more than 2 bedrooms per unit. There's parking requirements inside the property. There's requirements that sidewalks have to be located throughout the project in front of all the units and connecting to the parking areas. And importantly, I would note too that the site plan, if the zoning's approved, the site plan would come back to the plan board and come back to you for a final look at everything. But this would be the guiding document for anything that would come back. I would like to mention, we did propose 10-foot landscape buffers on all 4 sides. Part of the conversation at the plan board hearing was concerns about noise, particularly the noise from industrial areas, heading eastward towards the residential. Concerns about what residents in this property might experience, but also residents to the east that are there today. So what we have proposed in here, and we'd like to add it, if you're amenable to it, is to beef up those buffers, particularly on the west side and the east side, to require a fence to be on the east side and the west side, because that's really sort of what we're concerned about with sound coming from west of Main Street. So there would be a combination of landscape and fencing, and then on the west buffer, a landscape berm as well, so we can kind of raise the height and really just try to attenuate the sound as best as we can. That stormwater basin is over a couple 100 feet deep, so there'll be a lot of landscaping in that area too, all on the west side of the property. And the fence on the east side would serve 2 purposes. One, it would help with sound, but also it's to increase the compatibility with this project and the residents to the east. So there would be a solid privacy fence all on that property line. We do propose an access to Southside Court, and we had a discussion at the plan board, and they did not make any particular recommendation to change the access, but we think it's a good planning practice to have 2 accesses, but there could be a discussion with the board about maybe that's a limited access, maybe it's just for emergency vehicles, if that's something that is of great concern as far as traffic being directed over to Southside Court. In that scenario, all the traffic would be directed north to 176th Avenue. And as Bruce mentioned, this would not receive a DOT driveway permit because there's alternate road access points, including to the north and to the east. So, and the lowest part of the property is over on the west side, which is where the stormwater drainage would go, which is the big green area. So I wanted to lay all that out for you. And again, the fence and enhanced landscape buffering on the east and west sides are in response to the discussions at the city plan board. The developer agreement, and I've got about 4 or 5 slides. I certainly won't go through all of every word, but it essentially lays out what the permitted uses are. As I had mentioned, minimum dwelling unit size of 1,000 square feet, setbacks, buffers, the maximum building height of 2 stories or 30 feet, maximum building coverage of the site, some pretty substantial design standards for these units to make sure that they're not designed in poor quality, that they'll have a nice residential character to them. Use of architectural shingles and a combination of different materials for the building finishes, including brick, stucco, stone, shutters, etc. These are all things that would come back to you if this moves forward to review and approve. The architect for the project's here tonight, so he certainly could speak more to what the feel of the project would be as far as these residential units. There's one accessory building, which would essentially be sort of an office building. That would be required to also have the same architectural design standards, not just a trailer or something like that put on there. That would not be allowed. So again, there are some pretty substantial standards for architectural design. Refuse containers, dumpster would have to be fully screened in the property. There are also a lot of landscape requirements. A lot of these are related to landscaping around parking areas, landscape islands, how much tree canopy and shrub material has to be planted in these buffers. So this is all information that has been established by working with city staff and city manager to come up with these standards, and we agree to all of them. Again, there are requirements for curb and gutter, sidewalks within the project, more language about the buffers, and then if there's a sign, if there's a neighborhood sign, it has to meet all of code criteria, of course, but it also has to be enhanced with some landscaping or something else around it to make sure that it's high quality. I'd like to spend just a couple minutes going through your comprehensive plan and how this project's consistent with the comprehensive plan. This is your future land use map. The property has a land use designation of mixed use, which allows a very wide variety of non-residential and residential uses. To the east, the darker brown color is residential mixed, and the red is business industrial. This is just a page that is taken out of your comprehensive plan. I just want to make a couple points about the mixed-use designation. It does allow up to 12 units per acre of residential today, and so I neglected to mention of these 38, the maximum 38 units, that would be 5.1 units per acre would be the maximum. So it's less than half of what the city's comprehensive plan calls for residential. It also identifies primary uses, including residential as a primary use, so the project as proposed is consistent with that. PD is a preferred zoning district for compatibility with mixed use. This is another excerpt from your comprehensive plan regarding the traditional city area, which is more of the core of the city. It requires projects to be infill in nature, to have full city services available, which they are, interconnectivity of streets, and a small town scale and character.
It says Newberry.
Yes, I apologize. I don't, this is definitely not Newberry. Thank you for pointing that out. So in summary, the project is consistent with your comprehensive plan, so we're not asking to amend your comp plan. We're hoping to apply a zoning that would implement that comp plan. It's lower density than what's permitted now. About 40% of the site would be green space with some pretty substantial landscaping. The traffic that could be generated from this project is far less than what you could find in almost any type of commercial use on the property. There's requirements for common area maintenance and management for the common areas and the buildings themselves. There are no identified regulated natural resources on the property, and there's public facilities to serve the site. City staff has recommended approval, and the city plan board did vote to recommend approval. They did mention two things that they wanted some more follow-up on. They recommended approval, but asked us to work on this with you all. And one was a sound attenuation issue. And so that's what I had mentioned earlier about the fencing and the berm to hopefully help with that issue. Also, there was some discussion, some information was brought forward from some neighbors about some small sinkholes or chimneys that were near the property from about a year ago, and that was in your backup material. And I'll let city staff speak for themselves on this, but I can summarize what I understand. So the city of High Springs sent the engineering consultant for the city, Midtower, out to do a site investigation, and there's a letter of their findings. And then we also, my client, our property owner, hired GSE, geotechnical engineers, to do a site visit. This all happened within the last week, which was great, and a lot of times things don't move that quickly. But the Midtower Associates letter indicated that the chimneys that were identified over a year ago, or about a year ago, had been repaired, and they did not witness any evidence of new sink formation. They did not find anything on site that would resemble a sinkhole. Their recommendation would be to just do further geotechnical exploration when you get to the site engineering. That might be ground penetrating radar where they look for any cavities. They said this is very typical for the karst area in High Springs, as I'm sure y'all are aware. That does happen here. GSE had very similar findings. They stated that they did not observe any ground subsidences or localized depression areas on the site. They did not observe any indication of limestone outcrops. They reviewed the photos from 2022. Those areas had been backfilled and were not present at their site observation. They did not find anything out of the ordinary on the property. In their evaluation, they stated there's nothing unique about the geology at this particular site. It's typical to what the karst-sensitive areas are in the High Springs citywide. So we have done that professional exploration to see if there are any imminent issues here. So their recommendation is further geological exploration when the engineering of the project is done, which we would certainly do anyway, but we're just stating on the record that that work will be done. But there were no findings of anything in particular that would be unusual or special to this site. So with that, I'll conclude. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can stand by for questions later. Thank you for letting me present this to you tonight.
Thank you for the information.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do we have any questions, Commissioners?
Go ahead. Well, one of my questions has been answered about the sinkhole. I always thought the sinkhole was on that site, but I guess not. I guess it's for Bruce or Thomas. So what, the South Side Court, what that road look like? It's been so long since I...
It was paved with a sewer project that went through the gravity system.
Okay.
And there was some issues after that project went through and dug up, and there was some sinkholes, and that's all been mitigated, filled in. That was what Mid-Tower came and looked at.
Okay.
There were some stormwater issues, all that, most of that's been cleared up from best we can tell at this point. We had some torrential rain, some downpour in that area. It seemed to clean it up, but the retention pond should help with, in the site improvements in that area should help with some of that too, from talking with Mid-Tower.
Okay. And 176, what did it look like?
It was paved up until Southside Court, but from Southside Court to State Road 45 needs to be repaved. That's on a list that Thomas and I identified as well, but we haven't addressed it with the developer yet either. So, but that's on our, I believe, next year's road list, if I'm not mistaken, regardless of this going through or not.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of a concern. And I know you mentioned maybe using one road, but I think we need two roads coming out instead of pulling all that traffic onto 176. I see some citizens back there. And you say you're going to put fencing now. When you say what type of fence you're going to, I know you say privacy fencing, but when you say fence, what you mean? A wall or concrete, wood, or?
Madam Mayor, what we have on the plan is a minimum 6-foot tall privacy fence. So I think that is open-ended to what the city would like to see. We're not trying to suggest one or the other. Maybe it's a wood stockade fence or a vinyl fence or something else. So we just wanted to have the minimum height and make sure that it understood that it would be fully opaque and you can't see through. So we come to the city for direction on that issue. You want 8 foot, it could be 8 foot.
No, I'm just thinking about the material you're talking, material you're talking about using, you know, because.
There's still site plan approval. So that site plan approval, y'all will see all that.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I have a question. Clay, you mentioned that you've got a letter from Mid-Tower. I see GSEs here. I don't see Mid-Tower. Did we just not get it?
No, Mid-Tower typically wouldn't come. They were only requested to send the letter.
So Clay saw their letter?
Yes.
Okay.
And,
But we, do I just not have it here?
No, you were supposed to have it, and I don't know how it didn't. So I can go get it for you. It's basically the same thing as what GSC said.
Okay.
I can send it to y'all after this meeting, or I can go get it right now.
It's 3 paragraphs too. I could read it if it.
Well,
it's up to you.
we're only seeing this one from GSC the first time tonight, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of read over it a little bit before the meeting, but
Yes, ma'am.
it looks to me like, it was basically just a site visit. There's, no soil borings done, obviously no GPR done, but, so it was just basically a visual inspection of the site.
So what Mid-Tower says was the site's safe right now, but you need to do more work. And that's kind of what we said during the plan board meeting is we can visit it and make sure it's safe now, but there's not a whole lot else that's typically done until if y'all approve it, then they'll go forward with the plating, and that's when the rest will be done. But it was more just to make sure there wasn't anything alarming that you could see right now.
But that doesn't have anything to do with the developer's agreement still, which is
Right, it doesn't.
the item on, that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, but it was just a concern of the plan board, and that's why
Right.
we decided to look at it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Audience?
Hello, I'm Donald Alderman, Planning Board Chairman. Vice Mayor Ambrose is exactly correct about building a buffer between his business and a home. And I think we should take it under, how should I put it, more direct control over that. Viburnum is a great item to have, but once it reaches about 10 feet, it starts to thin out underneath. And then it can get as high as 20 feet, which then it just opens up. So I think when we do put restrictions on this, that we should also put in there as well maintenance of that, keeping it cut down, keeping it shaped, as well as I tried to look up, I don't know, on the ordinances, can they put buffers on the inside of, completely around the retention area? Or does it can only be on one side of it?
I mean, they could. I mean, if you did it, what we've been typically doing is just a tree every 50 feet,
Right.
but that's not a buffer. If you did something around the retention area, I actually would go with berms, is what I would do. And so when it comes forward in the site plan, if y'all approve it, then we'll pay attention to the slopes and the height and everything of the berms, and, you know, what plantings are there impacts how high it will get. And so we can work with a landscape architect and take that into consideration, as well as we discussed the building materials. So this is, it's a commercial site, so y'all get a more detailed site plan. You could request a landscape plan with the site plan in the motion so that everyone feels comfortable, and you'll get the renderings of the building.
All right, well, thank you very much. That's what I wanted to bring that to your attention, because
Yeah.
when it does come before us, we'd like to, if it continues on, that we'd like to be able to put those restrictions as well as the maintenance. And Mr. Ambrose is completely correct on that. There are some good shrubs out there, but they also can let it go. And if we let them put them in and they just get let go, then it's basically, because they'll get woody and thick like a tree to the point they're blocking nothing.
So we do have a requirement, we do have increased requirement for native vegetation, so that always helps. So we do also require irrigation at all sites, so, and as well as we have a new code compliance officer that he's going to be looking at the landscaping. There's a lot of people that need to replace and come into compliance with our code, so he can do that with this development as well.
And thanks for bringing that up so they would know. Thanks.
Anyone else?
My name is Ryan Kremser. I just have a quick question about the location of the fence. The dotted line here appears to show it right against the roadway, but I believe there's a setback on the highway, because that's a federal highway, that won't allow it to be built between the pond and the roadway. So where would that fence go? And is that contingent to your approval?
It'll be at the property line, but it'll have to be a little further back if they're going to place berms or some additional plantings. So when they come for site plan approval, we'll make sure that it's done, that it's not in the right of way. So
So the pond would have to get smaller in order for that fence to be between the pond and the roadway?
I mean, it will get smaller by a couple of feet. I mean, the same concept will be in place, but there will be, at the time when they do the site plan in more detail, then it's typical for the feet, the square footage, and different things to change a little, but they still would have to keep the 10-foot buffer around the site, and the PD has the 35-foot buffer. So it'll be more things that probably change internally.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Al Hale. I actually live in Southside. And I was surprised at who came up with the idea to change the zoning and do what they want. You know, I've heard from the planning board and the city manager say, it could be worse. Well, how could you get it worse? Okay? Show me how it's gonna get worse. People bought the homes in that area. They knew their property was commercial. It's been commercial forever. I know it's commercial. I'm sure the builder knew, whoever bought it knew it was commercial. Now, who says he can change that is beyond me. What's wrong with commercial? You know, I just don't understand that. How about the value of our homes? How would you like to have 38 rental units across from you? Are you kidding me? Has anybody lived in an area with 38 rental units? I have. I know what it's like. What is your old experience with rental units? How many of you people would like to have 100 cars a day come by your house? New cars, different cars that you never had before. That's what you're going to get if you're on 176th Avenue or Southside Court. Who knows about the rest of the streets? This is getting so you can live here, but you can't work here. You're getting rid of commercial property. Put the traffic on State Road 45. How come there can't be two entrance and exit on State Road 45? Did the state say you couldn't do that? Why? What's the reason why? Have you asked them? You know, I'm surprised at that. I mean, that was the whole idea of putting commercial property, people could exit on to the main road, not in the residential area. And I hope that y'all don't approve this plan, changing this zoning. You know, it's not good for the people in Southside Court or who lives in Southside. They got a lot more traffic. Not only that, we got issues with schools now. Our schools are getting at capacity. The daycares are too. Thank you for your time.
Madam Mayor, briefly, just to clarify this, we are going to talk about the zoning change, and that is the second item on the agenda, so I encourage you to come back up and talk about it. What we need to make sure we do is for this first item, we're talking about if the zoning goes through, if the zoning were to change, right? This is what our development agreement will be. So not whether or not we should, but if it does, what would we want it to look like? So we need to make sure that we sort of keep those separate. So just so everyone's on the same page.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Papers or nothing, but I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Are we talking about building a project in Disney World?
We're talking about a 38-unit duplex development in High Springs near Southside Court and 45.
And 176?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's where I live. And I even voted for you. I thought you were going to take care of us. Nobody's taking care of us. Isn't that right, Bruce? Well, tomorrow, I'll have somebody talking to you guys that actually knows what's going on. I'm disappointed in every damn one of you. We live in High Springs. There was a bomb that went off across the street and you want to put a 38 unit there? Somebody's getting paid off, in my view.
Is there anyone else?
My name's William Hines. Excuse me. I was one of the ones that actually showed up 20 minutes after that bomb exploded. I'm the first house behind Tumblemania. I still have lasting effects from the chemical smoke. The proposed supposed shopping center that would go up with 1,600 cars traveling in and out of that every day was asinine. I don't believe it. With that many people there, that in the main shopping plaza, we don't have that many cars coming in and out every day. And it's not going to be open 24/7 if they did put a shopping plaza there, which I don't believe they will. But this residential area being this close to that, and nobody ever expected that place to blow up. No, I didn't expect to have long-term effects from it. I went down and recorded on my cell phone. That was my mistake. But I think it's a mistake to put people that close to the propane tank, and accidents will happen. Eventually, it's going to happen. And people in that close proximity to those plants and everything there, if it blows up, people will die. There's no and ifs or buts about it. There is going to be no kind of tree buffer, nothing. The wall, and this being 30 feet high, 2 stories high, the people on the second level, you can kiss their butts goodbye, because even the ones on the lower level, because of the concussion blast from it, that was just a small explosion that was felt 2 miles away. And I'm really opposed to this going up for the main reason that the safety of the citizens of High Springs. And if this goes in, those people will be at risk of having their lives snuffed out due to a potential accident. Accidents do happen. That's why they're called accidents. People die. What we don't want is people to die in our neighborhood. A business going up, yes, traffic's not going to flow through 24/7. In a residential area right that, in that street, if those houses go in right there, or apartments go in, the traffic coming in and out of that 176 Avenue, which is basically right in front of my house. You okay? Okay, sorry. The traffic coming in and out of that main roadway, we're gonna need to have either a light put up there or something to allow the traffic to come in and out if this goes in. You sure you're okay? Okay. Okay, all right. I think so. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I ask the attorney a question? When we rezone a property, it has to have 2 separate votes, right? It has to be brought out once and then voted a second time, is that correct?
So the ordinance will come before you, just like a regular ordinance on first read and second read.
So it would take 2 separate trips to the commission in order to get this zoned from C3 or C2 to PD,
That's
correct?
correct. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion if possible, because I think we're conflating the developers agreement with the rezoning, to table the developers agreement until second reading if we get there. I'm not sure. I mean, I think we understand the developers agreement here, but I don't know that folks in attendance understand the difference in terms of what we're doing, and I think it's important that they understand that. Would it be problematic if we tabled this and brought it back the second time?
The only thing I would say is, bringing it back the second time, it could be brought back as a different document. It could look better or it could look worse. I have no idea. But when time goes by, it sometimes can change development agreements. I anticipate this one would stay the same, that there would be nothing that changed, but I just wanted you to know that's always something that could happen when you table things.
Yes, you don't have to. So have to versus recommendation. You don't have to. pass this right now before you do the first reading of the ordinance for rezoning. That's absolutely not a requirement. Best practice is to have your developer's agreement in place by the time there's an official rezoning, especially to PD, because you want to make sure that you've got sort of your ducks in a row and that there's no sort of downtime in between where, wires get crossed and now there's been a decision made and things sort of ball gets dropped sometimes. So if the question is, do we have to do this before we go to second reading or even first reading? No, we don't have to. Absolutely not.
I understand why we do it from the city's perspective, to get the best quality we could possibly get to be built on the site. I get that. But I also don't know why it is that we would do that until we were at second reading. I would make a motion that we wait until second reading so that we can hear people's input and concerns on the rezoning.
I would just recommend that we pass it because it gives us some safety if the zoning is to pass. And again, like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. We've gotten to the point where the developer has agreed to things up and above code, and I would hate for anything to happen that would impact that. I don't see anything happening, but again, you never know what can happen. So we have a good deal on the table right now.
First off, for the interest coming off of 27 in May, what'd you say the reason why they wouldn't allow that?
DOT won't allow more than multiple entrances within so many feet of each other. They consider it a safety hazard. It's part of their sign standards now. So if it's within, I want to say it's 250 feet, there's a roadway or a side road that goes that way, they're going to push the entrance in there and deny it. We had an issue with a church on 27 recently, and that was the reason we were given. Alderman was involved in that one, and then with the Dollar General, we ran into the same thing as well, hence why the entrance is off of 27, or off of 174th instead of 27 on there as well, which has also created issues as well, because now we have semis trying to go through the neighborhood, and we've been trying to combat that as well, even though they've been told not to do that. So that's another area of concern with keeping that commercial in there as well, because we do have semis going down Southside Court that we've been dealing with.
So what if they, I know 176 is there, but what if you say, okay, we don't want the interest off of 176 into there?
I think the objection, if I'm understanding it from them correctly, is they don't want the one off Southside Court, or either one, to be honest with you. They want it to go off of 27, but DOT is going to deny that all day long, based off of their design standards and their criteria.
Because those two streets are, because 176 is there and right. Southside's Court.
Correct.
Even though if the agreement say that they're going to enter off of.
We could say in this developer agreement that we want it to go off of 27, and DOT is going to come back and say no. And then we're going to be right back to square one doing this again.
That can also be put in the PD, in the zoning. If you could change the concept plan. So I agree with Bruce that I don't think it's an option to put one on the main road. But if for some reason FDOT said yes, and which I don't think they would, then that can be put in the PD. It doesn't have to be put in the developer agreement. You can just show it on the concept plan.
So, Clay, what is the frontage? I can't read off of this, and Catherine White is always saying we need larger drawings. We do. I'm looking. I'm guessing if I'm reading it right, it's like 241 feet.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
It's under 250. Yes, sir.
So it's under 250. So with the DOT rule, you couldn't put one in there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that's DOT rules. You can't.
DOT standards.
So if it remained commercial, it would stay the same. They won't allow.
They won't allow it. The same thing happened with Dollar General. They originally they wanted their driveway to come in off of 27 where the sign is, and DOT denied that, and we had to move it to 174th.
So if you put commercial there, I'm just used to that. I thought
It's still going to come off of 176 or Southside Court. It's not going to
So,
force it to go to
I
27.
thought large trucks not allowed on,
We-
74th, where you live on, it's allowed, put down.
No, it's not allowable.
No, it's not allowed.
It's not allowable
It's not
on
allowed.
174th. We had to give an exemption to allow them into their property right there. They're not supposed to go past their driveway. They're only supposed to turn in, go into Dollar General, come out, and go back out to 27, the shortest route possible. That was agreed between us and Dollar General when that happened. That was also 2 city managers ago and a couple building officials ago too, so, when that agreement was done.
which is, to be honest with you, it's crazy, because they got to come off 27 anyway to get on 174, but that's I'm not an engineer.
Basically, think of it this way, if you're, look at 340 and Main Street right there, 27. You have an exit coming out of the S&S, you have one out of Sam's, all of them are trying to come out at the same time with that 4-way intersection right there. It causes a lot of problems and congestion with people trying to turn off. If we were to do that today, none of those, Sam's Pizza wouldn't have their entrance coming into 27, and neither would the S&S. Everything would come in off of that side, off 182nd to get into their properties. So they're filtering in everybody in the one way. We can go with it. We can say, you know, have them petition DOT for a permit for entrance access off of 27. If not, it defaults to this. Or to the one off 176, and we can come up with something on Southside Court if we don't want to, or if we're allowed to make the exemption with fire code. But, I mean, we dealt with this with the church and there was already an existing right-of-way going in there, and we went back and forth, and we even wrote a letter in support of it, and they came back and said no.
We have a driveway that's been going in our church. It's been there for 30-something years. DOT has even paved it over and over again. When it came, and then they allowed the RV resort or RV storage place to put a driveway there, and by putting the driveway there and the entrance to the road right next to it, they came to us and told us we'd have to remove the driveway, which was gonna cost us about $250,000, and apply for permits to remove it. And now we have to enter, even though we have a road that's been there and the DOT's had it there for, like I said, 34 years, we have to go down the side road and have a separate entrance. We fought them left and right, and they just would not hear it. DOT's gonna say no, I'll be honest with you on that.
Any other questions or comments?
If I may, couldn't we, this is Emily Sharkey for the record, couldn't we have 2 entrances onto the commercial property?
Can you give us your name for the record, please?
Emily Sharkey. Couldn't we have 2 entrance exits on the north side facing commercial property instead of going straight to the residential? Couldn't they rearrange that? Wouldn't that be at this stage for the concept plans?
You typically would not funnel traffic into the Dollar General. That's what we're talking about. That's not. So what?
Towards Tumblemania.
Okay,
Yeah,
Tumblemania.
north
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
You said commercial, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, there's commercial on
Okay.
the north side
Okay,
too, so.
yeah.
To have it enter-exit that way, then not on the residential side or the industrial side, which I guess DOT will say no to. Have 2, like a normal loop out that way.
Right, I see what you're saying.
I don't even know that we really need that second entrance off the south side. I would have to dig through NFPA just to verify for fire department access and large vehicle access. But even if that second entrance was required, we could do similar to like what we do at Bridlewood, where we put a gate across for emergency vehicle access only and keep it closed. It's something we could compromise too, if it is required.
Mitchell Scaglione. Yeah, I don't think there needs to be a driveway on Southside Court. I mean, that road is completely run by kids. I mean, they're always on their bikes on that road. They're always driving golf carts up and down that road. By putting a driveway for 38 residences, I mean, you figure 2 cars per residence. That's going to be extremely dangerous for those kids and even the people that just walk their dogs up and down that road. You're taking away an entire area, basically, for all of these people.
Deborah Gezzi, and I live on Northwest 176. So with regard to the PD master plan, I don't want to get up in the morning and look at a 10-foot privacy wall on both corners like that. That's not why I moved to High Springs. There's going to be 152 additional people, assuming 4 people per unit in a 2-bedroom unit, and 114 additional vehicles with a minimum of 76, assuming that you're going to have 1 for guests. That kind of traffic up and down 176th Street is atrocious. We're not used to that. We're not used to that at all. Plus, we have troubles with our stop signs now. People don't stop. They blow right through. So that's going to be wonderful when you have all these people coming out trying to get to work because they can't get through Southside Terrace and Southside Court, and they have to come out on 176. It's not even good if they come out on Southside. It's just inconceivable. That it would blend in there. It does not. It's dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And there were concerns from the planning board about across the street, the industrial area, having that, and that was spoken to by William. There are sinkholes, and 40% is green space. 50% of that is that stormwater basin. So there is no green space to speak of.
Address everyone. I'm Dorota Hallman. I live at 17573 Southside Court, the corner property on 176 and Southside Court. I know I'm a dreamer and an optimist, but wouldn't it be wonderful to make something nice out of that property that's there? Like maybe a park for people? I mean, I know the owners that purchased that property. I know, did some research, they have a lot of money. They can get a great tax write-off if they do something nice for High Springs. It's just a dream. But also, right there, that road, Southside Court, the sinkholes didn't happen 2 years ago. They happened within the last month. And I don't understand, may I move on? May I point at something? These buildings right here, on 17th Avenue and Southside Court. They're so close to the street. Are they also apartment buildings? I mean, duplexes? You know what I'm saying? Yes, they are. So all the yellow will be thing. And the retention pond is on the wrong side because we get flooded. My home, every time it pours, Southside Court is flooded, and my whole property is flooded. I actually cannot get into my car without getting my feet wet. So the water should be collected on the other side. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you for your comments. All commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mayor?
Yes.
I mean, this is the hard part. I mean, nobody likes to be told what to do with their property, and that holds true for the people that are trying to develop this property. And so it's balancing the rights of property owners all around that are existing and those coming in. And, you know, I look to our codes because that's the rule book. And the plan development actually gives us a whole lot more leverage than our codes do. So our comprehensive plan and our land development rules, which are being revised and updated, but they haven't been done yet. So the plan development gives us a lot more leverage, and if we're going to have development, we're going to get something that looks a lot better than is happening very quickly in some of the surrounding communities. So, you know, to say they should turn it into a park, if that's not what the current owners want to do, then that's not what's being proposed. I'm not real happy with the idea on Southside Court. So if there's a way for when the site plan comes back to have looked to not make that a common primary entrance, I'd be definitely in favor of that, and I definitely want a site plan or a landscaping plan included with any site plan that comes back to us. And we don't have the option of saying, no, you can't do anything with the property. So this is what's in front of us to choose from right now. and I don't know that I legally have a reason to say no. My inclination right now is to approve this with with the conditions that the staff work with the Clay and the developers to mitigate traffic on Southside Court, that the landscaping plan really be looked at too and see what we can do there, so that that can be reviewed when the site plan comes forward, if it comes forward. That's kind of where I'm sitting, and I don't know what anyone else has to say and whether you're ready for a motion.
I don't know. Any comments, further comments from commissioners?
Just as a reminder, Madam Mayor, I think we do still have Commissioner White's motion on the floor to table.
Didn't get a second.
Okay.
The motion was to table the development agreement discussion until potential second reading for rezoning, so that we could focus on the rezoning, just because I think there's a little confusion in terms of the two being very distinct, different things. But it didn't get a second, so it died.
Yeah, and my hesitation in that, because I understand what you're saying and the confusion, because it's a process. You know, most people don't pay attention to the process until you get one of those notices. But if we pass this first, it's binding. If we don't pass it first, Tallahassee has a lot of rules about what we can and cannot do after zoning, and we're moving forward with the land development code. So it's my understanding this gives us more leverage to do it now than if we were to wait, because Tallahassee has been preempting so many things, like the ability to ask for the type of materials the buildings will be built out of goes away as we move forward. And I see Donald shaking his head back there.
Well, the other thing is, once they get their zoning, there's no incentive to do the things in the development agreement. So being a good neighbor, you know, hopefully they would, but that's why you put the development agreement first. And again, just because you approve the development agreement doesn't mean you have to approve the zoning. If the zoning's not approved, the development agreement, it's like it basically never existed.
Madam Mayor, can I ask the engineer a question?
Yes.
Clay, what's the width of the driveway coming in off 176?
24 feet.
24 feet?
Yeah.
And the one off of
Not
Southside
including the
Court?
radius, you know.
All right, and the one off Southside Court?
The same, 24.
Same.
On the concept drawing.
So if we went, hear me out for a minute before you shoot me down. If we went to a 36 split drive with a small island in the middle, shifted it down towards 27, split the retention pond, where we put a culvert underneath the road, give you the same footage, just shifted it down some to keep it closer to 27, delete the south side, you think that's something we could pull off? To keep some of that, try to keep it more in line with the entrance into Tumblemania, the property across, to where that entrance is closer to 27, to where it's not coming so far into the residential neighborhood?
I'm just looking at where that driveway is for Tumblemania. I think that would be difficult to go that far west.
Kevin, can you pull up Map Genius?
But making the driveway wider is not a problem.
So if we make that driveway wider, we do it split with entrance in and out, we can delete that other entrance off the south side. If we look at shifting it down a little bit, possibly work with the engineers, try to get a little closer to 27 to keep it out of the neighborhood a little bit. I don't know that's possible. I'm saying look at it. We can maybe relieve some of that congestion, or at least have the idea of trying to keep it a little bit closer that way. I don't know that it's going to be possible. It's something we have to look at, but looking at the fire code and looking at a couple of things, we can eliminate that south side with a couple little modifications.
If I may too, I'll just give you a recent experience that we had. We had a subdivision in Alachua, and it had almost 300 units in it, and there were 2 access points. And so there was a lot more concern about having 2 access points as a far greater size project, but we were able to work with the city to have 1 access point. It was actually an expanded, kind of an enhanced wider driveway, like you saw on a boulevard, and we made the second driveway an emergency vehicle only. Like I think the commissioner mentioned, have a gate. There's no everyday traffic going in and out, but it's there in case there's a fire truck or an ambulance or a medical emergency, and that passed through a fire code review for that project, which is, 8, 9 times whatever the number is, a lot larger. So I think that's
it'll pass
that's
that way too.
acceptable to us, and I sort of proffered that as well, if that helps. And we're not trying to direct the traffic eastward, so. And we definitely can try to move that driveway a bit to the west. I think the limitation is just, that's the lower part of the property for stormwater. And then if you get too close to the intersection, then you have concern about a driveway too close parallel with State Road 27. But we could try to move it a little bit further west. And then really the in and out traffic of the project is just on 176. It's across the street from another commercial property, so the traffic's not coming in and out, abutting any of the residential properties. Thank you.
Some food for thought.
Are you still taking comments? Yes? Okay. So Deborah Gezzi, and I live on Northwest 176th. And we all know that the quickest way to Gainesville is to go the back way down 174th, down to 222, and hit 441, takes you right 6.2 miles to the interstate. Don't go through town, it gets all backed up. You got 18-wheelers going through town and other huge vehicles. So everybody's going to come out that 176th entrance, and they're going to turn right. They're going to blow through that stop sign and go right up the road. And it's going to be a nightmare.
Mitchell Scaglione. I just kind of wanted to know what kind of planning was done with the city for the sewer that's going to be coming through those duplexes. I don't know if any of y'all have talked to any of the people with the city of Newberry lately, but they're having a lot of issues with the amount of people that they've got moving out there and the amount of apartment complexes that have been going on up there. Every time there's a large storm, every time there's a hurricane now, they have sewage back up. High Springs is not as large of a city as Newberry. I feel like that would be a huge issue, especially kind of right near all of those houses.
We have an expansion to our wastewater treatment plant right now that's under construction.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve the plan development with the requirement that a landscape plan be included with the site plan, and that the city staff work with the developer to remove access to Southside Court. Anything else that you want in the motion?
You mean the developer's agreement?
Hmm?
You mean the developer's
Yeah.
agreement? Okay.
Yeah.
Do I get a second? Okay. All right, it has been properly moved and second that the agreement for the development of Spring Garden Village be approved. All those in favor respond with aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
No.
Okay. Motion carries 3-1. Our next item is item number 3. Wait, let her read it first.
Oh, sorry.
Into the record.
All right, Madam Mayor, this is ordinance number 2023-08, an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the official zoning map of the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended relating to the rezoning of less than 10 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application Z 23-02 by the property owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from C2 commercial to PD 14 plan development in accordance with the concept plan submitted as part of an application dated February 10th, 2023 on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of High Springs, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, so you've already been briefed on the project. From the zoning standpoint, as Clay with EDA mentioned, it does comply with the code as far as what the comprehensive plan guides us to. As far as the zoning, the use is permitted by conditional use in the zoning district. Staff chose and advised that we would like to go the plan development route for approval because it allows us to work with the developer to get, as with the development agreement, more from them to upgrade the development on things that aren't in the code. It allows us to have more flexibility and work with them that way. So the surrounding land uses are C2 and R2, and this does meet, it's a typical use. It's typical to go from residential to a multifamily duplex to commercial and or industrial. It's kind of that middle use, so it makes sense. You see this set up in many cities. So staff does recommend approval.
And this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so we do need to make sure that everyone discloses any ex parte communications and that everyone is sworn in before we take any testimony.
Anybody?
I met some of the residents after the plan board meeting outside and invited them to come to the commission meeting.
Okay, and can you just certify, just briefly, that any conversations that you had won't affect your decision-making in this if
Absolutely
they're not
not.
sworn?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Thank you. Anyone else?
All right, nobody else?
I've had conversations with the owners of ThemeWorks and exchanged emails with the owners or representatives of Air Liquide and had emails from residents. None of that will influence my decision based on the information that's presented tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Nothing from me.
Nothing.
All right.
I've met with 2 residents. I've spoke with 2 of them in the area. It won't change any of my decisions either.
All right, Commissioner, what kind of comments do you have here?
Just briefly, if I could swear in anyone who's going to be testifying. So if you speak to this issue at all, please stand and raise your right hand. And we'll get your names for the clerk, and then I'll swear you all in. All right, starting from left to right, raise your hands high, because I'm short, I'm little. Back in the back, your name?
Gordon.
Okay. Next.
Deborah Gezzi.
Okay. Clay.
Clay Swigger.
Donald Alderman. Scott Gill.
Ryan Krenzer.
All right, did I give everyone? All right. Oh,
Ashley Stabatos.
do you all swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give here today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, you've been duly sworn.
Okay. Discussion. All right.
I had to move my business from High Springs because I could not find industrial property. Industrial property is the other side of agricultural land. When there's growth, it's very easy to repurpose warehouses and places that sometimes people don't want around. But that industrial property has a number of businesses on it that provide a lot of diverse jobs and opportunity in the community and contribute to the tax base, which actually keeps the tax base of property homes lower. So I have real strong concerns that at any time, if this were to go through, that suddenly will have residents going, hey, ThemeWorks had trucks, really big trucks. They're all night long getting loaded up with stuff so that at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is when DOT allows oversized loads to start moving, left for whatever the reason. And so my question is to the attorney, what protections can we put in for the people that own industrial property that they're not going to receive unfair pressure because now people are offended at their noise or exhaust fans that run at night or what have you. So what are there options that are going to protect their rights as people who've already invested in the community?
So there are things that we can do to work with the developer to essentially put into the deeds for each of these properties the restriction of you must allow each of these individuals to, you must inform them. So essentially recitations, declarations, that kinds of thing, and we can work with the developer on that. Now, there's not currently a requirement that they do that just of their own free will and volition, but that is something that we can work with them on to say that these are disclosures that we do want you to make to each of these individuals. Now, I will say that because I believe that these are going to be rentals, that really does sort of limit what we can tell the developer that they have to tell their renters when the renters come through. Because typically the protections that you get in this kind of situation are recitations and declarations in the deeds in these sort of homeowner association type properties. So it's something that we can certainly work on them with. We can, see if we can draw up an agreement that they will make those declarations. But our best tool to protect all of the surrounding properties is our land development code, is that developer's agreement that you all just approved to create setbacks, to create buffers, and to create these sort of situations wherein there is that barrier for the people that currently reside. I don't know if that answered your question fully.
Could I ask you, in our noise ordinance, could we make it more flexible for that area from the rest of the city?
I would not recommend making a specific part of the city different in your noise ordinance. That's sort of a targeted change and typically not permitted.
Okay. I just thought I'd ask.
But the noise ordinance, of course, also there you can use that, but it is limited to your ordinances and your land development code.
Madam Mayor, yes, ma'am, please. I've got some questions. You said, Ashley, that going to PD complies with code and our comp plan. Keeping it at C2, does that also comply with our code and our comp plan?
Absolutely. So this is a use permitted in C2 with the conditional use. So they could have come to y'all for conditional use for this use. Again, it's already allowed in the zoning with the conditional use. Or they could have come with a planned development to do this. And staff recommended the PD because we can put more regulations in a PD with it. That's why we went the PD route to see if we could get consent that way. But yes, you could just keep it C2. But even keeping it C2, another user that if they wanted to do this development could still come up and ask for a PD or a conditional use.
And would we be required to grant that?
No,
Would
you
we
are,
be legally
you're not
required?
required to grant a conditional use or a PD.
Well, I want to make sure I'm respecting the property owner's legal rights. I understand that completely. But you indicated the surrounding land uses are C2 and R2, but you neglected to mention industrial across the street. So on three sides, well, you've got commercial on two sides, industrial on one side, and R2 on the other side.
Yeah, the north is C2, south C2, east R2, and west industrial.
Industrial, okay. And with the R2, if you look at south side, those homes are on usually about a quarter of an acre, sometimes a half an acre. They're kind of larger lots than in a PD. And And I respectfully disagree that a planned development with 38 units slammed onto 3.7 acres is a natural transition. I think it's very unnatural, given the confines of this specific location. And Clay, I appreciate you coming. You're always professional. You always do a great job presenting, and I know you've done a lot of homework. And we keep being told that if we don't do a PD, you never know what you're going to get. Well, I mean, and I looked at this map that Christy printed for me on Tuesday, and most of our residential areas are R1 and R2, and those are developments like Springstead, Pinecrest, High Springs Estates, Tillman Acres is R1, I think. Cinnamon Hills, Southside is R2. So there are a lot of neighborhoods that we have in High Springs that are R1 and are R2, and they're not PD, and they're lovely, and they're varied, and they're more High Springs to me than PD is. I attended the Plan Board meeting, and I see the pictures of the sinkholes that are there, and I calculated a total number, estimated number of 133 people that could live there, figuring 3.5 people per residence roughly. And if they are a rental property, and God forbid something happened across the street, and they were not required to disclose to those 133 souls, I think that before we can consider rezoning for that kind of density in a place where I do genuinely consider is highly unnatural, we can't do that without GPR. We can't do that without a geotech report. We've got to see soil borings. We know there are sinkholes there. I drove around too, but I didn't get out, and I know there's nothing there now, but there have been things there very recently, apparently, according to the residents. And we see these pictures, and these pictures give us no sense of scale or depth.
So, you know, as we've discussed, the geotechnical would come at engineering. And then if there were discovered there were issues, then where there have been duplexes laid, they would not be allowed to go there. So right now, you're supposed to be making decisions based on compatibility. And the engineering is when you make that decision at plating.
I understand that order of operations, but I think in a situation like this where we've got known issues, can we really, in good conscience, rezone something like that without the competent, substantial evidence that dictates and supports it? It could even support that kind of density.
So I don't think we have evidence, according to our engineers.
That walked the property.
Yes, they
Right,
came out here.
right, right.
So they haven't said that, yes, there is an issue, or no, there's not. They say it requires further study. They're saying it's safe right now and requires further study. That's all we can, there were 2 engineers that put that forward, so that's all we can go by. So based on what the engineers put forward, it would not be appropriate to make a decision on the zoning based on geotechnical. That has to be made at plating.
Okay, well, then I would respectfully disagree with the compatibility. We've got good neighbors, good industrial neighbors that employ a lot of people here. I know they voiced concerns, they sent letters. You know, ThemeWorks is a really unique place. Air Liquide, thank God nothing went really bad, and thank goodness they were good neighbors and they let our first responders have access so that we could run drills, and we knew exactly what to do, and thank goodness everything went as well as it possibly could. But with the gentleman who spoke that is a little bit farther than this property, and he sustained some kind of medical issues based on an incident that was well controlled, this is not a compatible use for this kind of property so close to commercial and industrial land. Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, the more I look at this map, that's the problem. It's not compatible to this area. Here you got C2 to the north, south, and then industrial to the west, and then to the east of it you got the residential area. I'm just having a problem. It's not compatible with this. I'm having a problem with that.
Well, and that's what the decision's supposed to be made on. If you don't think it's compatible, then That's why you're here.
Yes.
But that's appropriate to make the decision based on compatibility.
Yeah, and then let me
based-
ask you one more question though. So you saying if we don't change, they still can build, but they have to come back with a conditional use permit?
If they wanted to still do it, they could come and ask again under the conditional use permit. You do not have to grant it. More than likely, they wouldn't, because the likelihood that if you don't approve it as a PD, the likelihood is also that you wouldn't approve it as a conditional use permit. We went this direction because the developer was willing to make a more, a development with higher standards than our LDC requires.
Mhm.
So that's why we went the PD route.
Yeah.
But I would also like to say, as far as if you make a decision based on industrial not being compatible, that is appropriate. If you make the decision thinking there's going to be some future accident, I just would like to ensure people, if that was the case, then people would be vacated from that area right now. I mean, the fire department has gone in and assessed the situation. It is safe. And if it wasn't safe, people would not be living within the proximity right now.
Yeah. No, that haven't even crossed my mind. That may never happen in our lifetime again.
Right.
We just don't know. We can't predict the future. That even haven't crossed my mind. But it's just the more I look at it, it's just not, not compatible. I can't see it.
I get that, and I want to protect the rights of the industrial property owners, but also, in C2 zoning, it is possible, by, conditional use permit, they'd come and say, yeah, we want to do it. And we have businesses that go, our workers have to live in Columbia County and would like to live closer, but they can't, and this type of thing. What they're proposing is a pretty high scale. I mean, they're clay set up to 30 feet high, but I think that's even with a peak of a roof, because they're only single level buildings. They're not 2-story. Am I correct on that, or are they?
Combination of 1 and 2.
There are a combination 1 and 2. Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you. So I appreciate the head nods back there. I am paying attention. I guess I would be, I don't know. It's tough because there are a lot of other things that could go in there too. And again, it's like, okay, we do know about this and people are looking for something to do. And we have a property owner that wants to work with the city. If we say no and they choose to be very open to who they might allow to go in there, that's a whole nother thing, because now they want to get rid of the property.
I would like.
You could go either way, and I'm more inclined to try and give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, Clay stands up here and he's represented good projects. They have a good history. And it could be just as compatible as you could say it's incompatible. I would just definitely want a deed restriction in there. At least, you're not going to give it to the apartment renters, but you're going to say to that piece of property, don't start complaining about what's across the street. And Air Liquide spent a ton of money to make sure that when something happened, it would be mitigated. And that is pretty much what I understand happened. So I'm more likely to say yes to it. It's 8:30. You go into theater mode, you turn silent and everything else, and the alarm still goes off. Sorry.
All right. Any other comment?
It's always been my vision that corridor's going to be commercial. That's just not apartments. And there's other areas quite throughout the city that's compatible for this type of use. When I look at it, I just don't see it being compatible.
I get it.
I can't see it. Yeah. What you got the homes. I don't see it being compatible.
Just so the commission is aware, there are many uses allowed by right, so not anything that comes to this property will come before you, just so y'all know that. I know y'all know that, I just want to remind you. So,
Okay, can I go to the audience? Sure. All right, any comments from the audience?
Deborah Gezzi, I live on Northwest 176. Rezoning from C2 to planned development high density would put 152 additional persons, assuming 4 per unit. 3 parking spaces, which would be 114 additional vehicles in that area. It would take 8 blocks to do that in the current setting, which is 1/4 to 1/2 acre single-story homes. Development will negatively impact the existing neighborhood with additional traffic and patterns not consistent with single-family residential neighborhoods. Proposed planned development with future mixed use is not compatible with current use and conditions. It attempts to achieve a more balanced mix of uses to provide greater transportation choices. And the overall premise is that walking becomes an option. You can't walk on US 2741. And it's 1.5 miles to any kind of grocery store. US 2741 does not have sidewalks or a bicycle lane, and there are 18-wheelers that come from Gainesville and Newberry up that road, 60 to 40 to 30 when they finally get to the S&S. There are 2 small lots for C2 development, which would not encourage infill as proposed. And the closest grocery stores are 1.5 miles away. Winn-Dixie, CVS, Dollar General, Family Dollar. There is a Dollar General next door. O'Reilly, Family Discount, and S&S are the closest. Restaurants, antique stores, breweries, churches, they're all in town. They're 1 mile away. This is not within an urban area, and it's not appropriate for more intensive residential, retail, and commercial use. There are areas that are typically in close proximity to and served by an arterial highway, 6.2 miles before you get to I-75. So this doesn't even meet mixed-use compatibility, let alone what's there. So where mixed-use development allows interaction among land uses and encourages mass transit and non-vehicular trips, to where? Who's investing in that? I don't see anybody investing in mass transit up and down 2741. Where are they going? To Gainesville, Newberry? I don't think so. It will not provide housing opportunities within walking distance of the city core or commercial areas. The green space will only be approximately 1/2 to 1/4 of an acre once you start taking out all the other stuff around it. And the site of a 30-foot high building, whether it's the peak of the roof or not, these are all 1-story areas. I went and looked at the 2 planned developments that are in High Springs. The Villas, which is behind Winn-Dixie, and Spring Hill, which is north. They're all within close proximity. They all meet that mixed use. I would recommend that that's where this goes, but not down here. You know, there are so many concerns with this area, so much concern with traffic, and so many concerns with the traffic flow that it just is not compatible.
Just for clarification, because the number of people that are going to live in each unit has been thrown out several times, the average household size is typically 2.7 and 3.2 people, and that's on an average home, so a duplex would be less than that. So if you just went with the bottom scale of 2.7, which a duplex again would be less than that, you're looking at around 95 or below.
Donald Alderman, I don't think we can protect our industrial area just by writing it in something. And I'm going by experience. I know of an airport that was built in a swamp, wetlands all around it. Over just 2 decades, developments went up around it. Everybody knew the airport was there, but all of a sudden there was complaints about loud noise. They stopped the development. We had a commercial airline coming in. They had to had them restricted to the point they quit coming in, and it just basically became a nothing airport that's only a few people can use at a time, and even hours. We couldn't land there after 11 o'clock. So I'm just saying, no matter how you write this, I don't think we can protect our industrial, because somebody will complain, somebody will get bent an ear, commission will change, someone else will side with that. They may come up with a state law that allows them to use it against them. So I just don't think we can protect our industrial just by writing it in an ordinance or an agreement with the builder. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, you have the gentleman coming behind you.
Hello, I'm Scott Gill. I'm the president of ThemeWorks. I'm also the owner of the two of the 4 industrial properties directly across the subject property. ThemeWorks has been in business for 28 years. We had 1 employee when we started, and we moved to High Springs in 1 year when we were 1 year old and had more than 1 employee. We're now at 100 employees, and if you guys go to themeworks.com and tell your friends, your talented friends, to apply, we'll be around 130 by the end of the year, hopefully. Our economic impact is fairly significant in High Springs. We have our clients come up. Today was Universal Studios. Yesterday was Disney. They're here every week. They bring their teams up here. They stay in local lodging. They gas their vehicles here. We eat at the restaurants. We fuel our own vehicles here. Ace Hardware probably doesn't know it, but they hold up half of Disney World probably. So we have a considerable impact, and we've enjoyed a good relationship with the city of High Springs for the better part of 3 decades, and have put a considerable amount of investment into what used to be an old tobacco warehouse, for those that remember that far back. It was a great purchase for us back in the day, and we made High Springs our home, and it's worked well. But the threat of having additional residents put in close proximity to our operation increases our risk, right? So that's going to drive up our costs. It could drive up our insurance costs because of the increased liability. It could reduce our property values. In general, it's going to threaten our ability to operate as we do now, with the assurances that we are an industrial property and across the street is commercial. I would really encourage you to vote no on the zoning change. ThemeWorks has been a good partner with High Springs, and I think this particular proposal would really put a dent in our ability to grow in the future and stay in High Springs. Appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, Clay Swager for the property owner. I'd just like to make a couple final comments. If there was a need or a desire to have disclosures or deed restriction, we certainly would have no objection to that at all. We want to be a good neighbor. This project is designed, these residential units are as far from the industrial land as possible. It's on the other side of a state arterial roadway. If these industrial businesses, which are established and very important to the community, meet the code for noise and everything else, they never have anything to worry about. They have the right to be there. This property in your comprehensive plan has the right to be residential development. You have, there's a right to build this as residential. It's a lot lower density than what could come in with something higher. This plan has more buffering, fencing requirements, things that the code doesn't require. It's beyond that. It's as good as it can be. It's lower density, it's greater separations and buffers. We've agreed to every condition that you brought forward to us. We've even offered some here tonight and agreed to them as far as limiting access. Your comprehensive plan allows this use. I'd like you to consider that again. And as far as the sinkholes, the expert testimony on the record through these letters from a geotechnical engineer is that there's no other work that needs to be done now. They didn't find anything on this property, and there's no evidence that this is an unusual situation. And certainly everything will have to be done at engineering phase with the GPR to examine if there's any caverns or chimney, things that have to be done. And that could stop a project. But there's nothing that has been presented to you by any experts to say there's a problem there. But it will be properly analyzed. So again, this is about evidence and testimony. I just want you to keep all those things in mind. The presentation I gave you would all apply, of course, to this zoning. I would ask that if you are considering making a motion to deny the zoning, that you consider continuing the item until there's a full commission to have a vote on this item. And if there's anything else I can answer for you tonight, I'd be glad to do it. Thank you.
Would it be helpful if I went through some of the permitted uses that would be allowable on C2?
Yes, please.
Okay, so looking at Muni Code Online, so some of the permitted uses for C2 are accessory dwellings, you got bed and breakfast, nursing home, independent living facility, assisted living facility, memory care facility, miscellaneous retail trade, sales and retail goods, sales and retail goods outside, convenience stores without gasoline, banks without drive-up windows, office supplies, pharmacies, antique gift shops, plant nursery, shopping center, beauty shop, pet grooming, duplicating services, laundry match, dry cleaning pickup, alterations, tailoring, photographic studio, travel agency, dance studio, personal services, repair shop, small appliance, restaurant without drive-through, restaurant with drive-through for conditional, bakeries, mobile food dispensing vehicles, microbrewery, brew pubs or tap rooms, professional offices, veterinarian, vets are allowed, government offices, laboratories for testing. So those are just some of them that goes down, and there's a bunch of conditional. Amusement indoor, clubs, fraternal lodges, union halls, health and gym clubs, parks, libraries, museum, art galleries, art centers, churches or other religious structures, daycare, child care facilities, public buildings, police, fire stations, rescue stations, hospital, post office, funeral homes, agricultural operations including livestock, excluding livestock, conservation parks and open spaces. So just to give you some of the permitted uses that could be allowed that wouldn't come to the commission. They would not, because they're permitted by right in that zoning.
My name is Ryan Kremser. You read about, I don't know, 50, 60 different uses there. How many of those were high residential, high density residential?
Well, we didn't even talk about that. I skipped that and just went to other uses because that's what we're discussing right now. But I mean, assisted living facility would be high residential.
Sure.
A memory care could be high residential. B&B could be considered high residential. Assisted living, independent living facility, high residential. You could have a daycare facility there, depending on the size. It could have a lot of people in it as well. A lot of these have a lot of transient traffic in it that don't have, you know, a normal amount of people living there. So transient traffic going in and out of a retail place, we don't know what the transient traffic is. So if you want to talk about emergency response or evacuation, and you want to get into that side of things, I don't know what Dollar General is going to have in it at any point in time if I got to do an evacuation. So.
You know, we appreciate that the planning board and the commission have heard our concerns, and when they approved the planning, when the planning board approved it, they put something in there about noise mitigation. And I think the response to that, or what has happened since then, is very indicative of where this kind of thing could go and where our concerns are. We talked about noises from an industrial plant and light spilling from a 24-hour operation at Air Liquide, and the response was, if I heard correctly, a 6-foot-high vinyl fence. And this is a two-story residential, two-story residential, correct?
So I don't think the material of the fence has been decided yet. It
But that was a possibility.
A possibility, yes. But, you know, they would, if it was approved, they would work with us on site plan.
This person's putting duplexes across from industrial property, so I'm guessing they're not looking to build a 15-foot high, nice brick wall.
Right, and I wasn't talking about height. This normally be 6 to 8 feet. And,
So how
but
would
the
that block light
materials.
for a two-story
Well, for
house.
instance, if they did, say they did masonry, that would screen much more
It
as far as the
could.
sound than
could.
the vinyl.
But if you're building if you're building duplexes across from industrial, you're probably not going for the high end of the market. You're building those duplexes as cheaply as you can because you're not going to be able to rent them for that much when they're across the street from industrial. So I think, yeah, it could be good, it could work, but most likely it won't. And I just want to speak to the importance of industrial properties and businesses like ours and businesses like Air Liquide to a small town like High Springs. You know, we have an intern currently who grew up here in High Springs, is attending architecture school at UF. She's doing her internship at ThemeWorks, and we hope she'll stay after she graduates. We have numerous people in professional roles that are from this area, and as I said at the planning meeting, those people didn't have to go to Tampa or Orlando or Jacksonville. They have additional time since some of it was taken up by the reading of the. Those people didn't have to go to major cities to find opportunity because they found it right here in High Springs. And we have multiple generations of families working at ThemeWorks. And, you know, businesses like ours help hold families together, they help hold communities together, and they keep High Springs an independent and robust economy. If you want to be a bedroom community for Gainesville, where it's just a suburb and nobody really works here, then allow this sort of thing. But if you want to defend, you know, High Springs as an independent city within its own economy, then you got to protect businesses like ours and businesses like Air Liquide, which offer, you know, good jobs. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? No? Okay.
Madam Mayor, before we go to commissioner comment, the applicant should be given an opportunity to address any of the comments that were made after he spoke,
Okay.
if he so chooses.
I don't have any further comments other than my concluding statement a moment ago. And if you have any questions, if you're able to ask them of me moving forward, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you all want to consider waiting until we have a fifth vote? Because a
Yes.
tie puts us at a no. And I don't know whether it'd be a tie or not, but do we want to extend that? Because we have extended to other developers when we've been in this situation.
That was going to be my recommendations as well.
Bridalwood passed with 4 people present. I mean, we did pass that PD with only 4 of us here. So we.
It can be done, but just in case there is a tie here, we would need that extra one to go make
Yeah,
it
and
final.
You are absolutely correct, but in that case, the applicant didn't suggest it. And given the quasi judicial nature of this, and for those in the audience that don't understand, that's a pretty specific process that grants a lot of rights on what we do. So we want to make sure we do it right and have that represented. And I know it extends it to all of you, but we have done it. So I just throwing it out there, depending what the will is.
Okay. Then was that your motion?
I make a motion, we table this until the next meeting, where we continue it, assuming we have a body of 5.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. It has been properly moved and seconded that ordinance 2023-08 be tabled until next meeting. All those in favor respond with aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries.
Commissioner Williams, you'll be here for Florida, you're not leaving Florida League
Florida,
Cities?
yeah, I won't be here.
Uh-oh.
I won't be here.
So I don't know if you want to put it on
I'm
next.
leaving Friday morning, but I'll be here for the meeting, but that would put us back to 4.
I don't think it'll be a
If I
good
can
idea
make
to
a clarification, I believe the motion was to continue it until the next meeting
Or
when we have a
Five.
body of
Five.
5.
Okay.
So
Right.
whenever we have the next 5.
That's when it comes up. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
It makes it easier. All right. Item number 4. Discuss, consider, and act on agreement with the school board of First Christian Academy for the School Resource Officer Program.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Commission. I don't think my
Good afternoon.
topic would be as long as the previous one,
Come on.
So we're bringing forth the annual contract. This has to do with the First Christian Academy. The difference in this contract is there's approximately 8% jump in pricing, $4,000, and last year we were at a $7,000 jump, about 15%. So the contract, just like every other contract, it's for uses of our school resource officer for about 10 months. When we look at the actuality for the uses of that officer, it's probably almost 50-50 split, and I can explain that. We have use of that SRO during teacher work days, and if you're a school employee, you know, there's a lot of holidays. So spring break, the schools are off for a week. Christmas break, they're off for about 2 weeks. They have storm days. Thanksgiving, a week during the summer, as I've indicated. We have about 2 months uses of that SRO. And during that time, that officer is used for shift coverage, reducing overtime. They supplement patrol for problematic issues, for proactive policing. For instance, if we're having car burglary issues in a certain neighborhood, perhaps the SRO or patrol will target those areas, so the school resource officer is used in that instance. Also, for service calls during the school year, for that particular school or any other school, service calls exist. FCA has about 500 students. I've been told they have about 10, 11 zip codes. So when there are issues happening in those jurisdictions, per se for Department of Children and Family Services, the school is a safe haven, so we get plenty of DCF calls. Having a school resource officer there at the school that's being paid for by FCA helps divert our resources so that patrol isn't bothered and have to respond to that school. So aside from community policing aspect and enriching those relationships with our students, our contractual agreements are significant benefit to our organization, and we'll continue to reassess the school resource program and its funding each year. All right, any questions or comments?
And a copy of the agreement attached to the agenda, but then there's the one on our desk tonight.
Correct.
Is it the same thing?
So it should be the revision one or the reduced one at 57,071.38, that proposal.
Okay.
And that's what percentage higher than last year?
Last year, we were at a 15%, which was a 7,000 increase. This year's about 8%, it's a 4,000 increase. And they're getting very compatible to the other.
So it was like 52 last year, and it's 57 this year?
Correct.
Okay.
I did hear you mention those numbers, but I didn't know if the two documents was the same.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, comments, commissioners? Just a minute. Any comments from the audience?
They all gone.
Any comments from the audience that left? Okay, then in that case, yes, now I want a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the agreement between the school board and First Christian Academy.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that the agreement for the resource officer for First Christian Academy be approved. All those in favor respond with aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0.
And just, I know Sergeant Taylor was here last meeting.
Yeah.
gave you guys an invitation. I just want to reiterate that invitation to our
August the
National Night
1st.
Out. So it's going to be August 1st, 6 to 9. I will not be there, unfortunately. I'll be at a conference. I don't know who decided to have a Florida Police Chief Conference doing National Night Out, but I'll be there. So you guys have fun.
All right. All right. Item number 5 is Resolution 2023M.
This is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of High Springs, Florida, relating to the levy of general municipal purpose ad valorem taxes for the 2023-2024 fiscal year, beginning October 1st, 2023, and ending September 30th, 2024, establishing a proposed millage rate, computing the rolled back rate, setting a public hearing, providing for notice to the Alachua County property appraiser, and providing an immediate effective date.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner comments?
I just have a question for you, Diane. So this is a not-to-exceed millage rate.
That's correct.
Is this the
Right.
same as the not-to-exceed number last year?
No, it's not. Last year, it was 6.25. This year, we're putting in 6.99. We're at 5.99 currently. Again, we're still putting together the 24 numbers for next week, so we want to be able to make sure that we're giving you enough room to work within. But again, it's a not to exceed. It doesn't commit you to any value whatsoever. It just means you can't go over that without sending new trim notices to everybody, and we do not want to do that.
Okay.
That's a big jump from last year's not-to-exceed number, though, in terms of actual millage.
That's right.
We can't set that at 6.25 the same we did last year?
I would not recommend it. As we've been discussing, we have overages in the insurance, the utilities, the cost of equipment, and supplies. The list goes on and on and on, so we're still working on cuts. And I would just like to have an opportunity to have the budget completely done and not commit to anything at this point.
And you need this much more wiggle room to give you that breathing space.
I don't know how much wiggle room I need right now. All I can tell you is that I just keep going back through it with Diane and Bruce, and we just keep trying to cut. We've taken projects that we typically would do in a budget, they've been taken out. And so, it's the financial, inflation is hitting us now.
And again, you can't go over, but you can.
Right.
So
I mean,
that's-
our goal is not
Yeah.
to go to that.
Yes.
You know, that's not our goal, but I don't want to be committal to anything until the budget's completely done.
Right, the challenge is if you commit to a lower max, and then we need more to do the things you want us to do, then we're stuck. Or just even our baseline, I mean, we talked about this with last year too. We set a very, very tight baseline just to be able to get through without adding anything, without doing really much. A lot of things that we should have been able to do, we didn't do because we were on such a tight budget. And if we stay at that level, it really inhibits our ability to do our jobs. And we don't want to put you in that position where you're making a decision, do we, do this or do that? And they're both equally as important. We want you to have that leeway to be able to make that decision and not be, stuck with a max that's not realistic, so.
Very good. All right.
I'm inclined, to set it the higher limit, and I do think budgets are a reflection of the community priorities. And as we get into the budgeting process, we're going to be sorting that out. I've also seen what happens when a commission commits to a lower number, and then they get into the numbers and the weeds, and they realize their hands are tied. So I'm not in favor of going that way, but I keep hearing this about where you guys are at in the budget. I want to see a draft. I don't care if they're still WAG numbers. I want to see the numbers you guys are bouncing around right now to understand what you're dealing with. And whether it's on the agenda or not, I don't care. I just want something to see what you're currently doing and working with as we get closer to the budgeting process. And I'm perfectly willing to understand it's not final, you don't know, but I want to see something.
So our goal, we had discussions, our goal was to get something out Monday, Tuesday to y'all. And that's our goal. So, and then on Thursday, we'll lay out the 2023 projections, but we're gonna let y'all kind of take some time to look at that because we want to focus on Thursday on starting to give y'all the information from the departments. So that's our goal.
So can I clarify what you're saying then, Ashley, is that we're going to get some kind of draft early next week and then start discussing some details that same week?
So it's more what
The
happens
presentations?
at the workshops. We just go over what each department does, and we can discuss them. There's several like that's not even the formal public meetings that are held yet. Those are we have the workshop meetings, and then we get into the formal public meetings. So there's a series of meetings.
And by what date do we have to set this not to exceed millage rate?
Next Thursday, it has to be into the property appraiser's office, the tax collector's office. So we need to.
So we have to pass something before we see any budget numbers.
We have to do it tonight, yeah.
Yeah, the timeframes are really restrictive.
Yeah,
but
I
it's-
know.
But it doesn't hurt us to set it high right now because traditionally, I don't know of commission that's ever stuck with the high number when they set it. I know of commissions that regretted it when they set it lower early on in this process, but I don't know. I mean, the odds of a stain with 699 are pretty slim.
And as we go through things, we'll, identify, staff will make recommendations. We'll cut what we can, and then we'll make recommendations to cut more, but you need to be involved in that process and realize the implications tax-wise. If that's the direction we go, I mean, we could, there's lots of directions right now, but we need to have the workshops sessions first, so y'all can determine the priorities of the community.
For next year's budget, are we going to have tax revenue coming in from the solar power plant and from the old fellowship, from Palms Medical? Will those be on the books?
Palms will not be on the books. They haven't really even started.
Why is that?
Because they haven't done any major improvements yet.
So just it being zoned differently doesn't flip that
No,
switch?
You have to be on the tax roll as that new entity, space, whatever, actively have certificate of occupancy and be ready to go on January 1. And when that happens, that revenue will come in the following November through March. So even if something came on the tax rolls this January, we won't see it until November, for example, and then the same with next year. So the solar farm.
Yeah, it didn't come on in
after
January 1. Oh, yeah.
So that we wouldn't see until fiscal year 25, November of 24. So, or between November and March, when they pay. But, so that's the biggest challenge, I know, because we get really excited too. We're like, oh, great, we're gonna have some new revenue. And then you really look at it, not only is it a calendar year away, it ends up being in another fiscal year even. So there is quite a bit of time that goes by. And once we get there, it's wonderful, but in the meantime, we gotta kind of hang on.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? No? Then I'll repeat for the few people in the audience. Any comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain the desires of the commission.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-23-M.
Second.
Thank you. It has been probably moved and seconded that Resolution 2023-M be approved. Yes.
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 Thank you. Resolution carries 4-0. And our next item, item number 6, discuss, consider, and act on ordinance 2023-09.
Madam Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of High Springs, Article 5, Boards, Commissions, and Authorities, Division 7, Mayor's Youth Council, providing for severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
right, commissioners?
So can I?
Yes, you can.
So this was requested by Commissioner White, and it's changing the number of board members from 7 to 5. So basically creating 5 board members with 2 alternates, but allowing the alternates to have voting privileges. So that's kind of like if we get 2 more, they can vote too. And then it's changing the date for the switchover of the seats from April to November. And one of the things I meant to put in there that I didn't get in there that we caught this week was the ordinance says it's open to people in high school, in private school. So we wanted to also, if you approve this tonight, please prove it contingent upon accepting homeschoolers as well, adding homeschoolers to the ordinance. And then staff will make that change before it's signed.
Very good.
And Ashley, I just want to clarify also that you and I talked about, I know on the website it said that it should be kids from Santa Fe High School or High Springs Community School, but the intent of the ordinance is for it to be the appropriate age child who lives in High Springs but might go to Lofton or Newberry or FCA, obviously with, private, but any school in the county so long as they live within the city limits. Is that correct?
Right. So
Okay.
we would change that sentence to High Springs kids in
Residents, right.
High Springs residents, grades 8 through 12, who attend public, private, or homeschool. Basically, who are in school. Any school.
As long as they're in school.
And I have one other question. It says here, if there are not enough members to make a board in November, the board may be appointed at any time during the year, that there are enough members to make a board. Does that mean that since there are currently no board members, if we pass this ordinance, could we appoint them right away and not have to wait till November?
Yes, it was written for that as well.
Yippee. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Anything else? Anything from the audience? All right.
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we pass ordinance number 2023-09 with the edits that the city manager indicated.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been properly moved and second that ordinance 2023-09 be approved.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. Motion carries 4-0. All right. City Attorney report update.
I know that you all probably miss Scott and or Danielle, but thank you for sharing your evening with me tonight.
Of course, anytime.
Two of the things have already been discussed. That Florida League of Cities Conference is August 10th through 12th. And Commissioner Williams, Vice Mayor Ambrose, and I will all be attending. From my understanding, Vice Mayor Ambrose will be at the commission meeting, but we will still, Commissioner Williams and I will still be at the meeting. The first budget workshop, as has been mentioned, is this upcoming Thursday at 6:30 p.m. And we will be going over the general fund departments. And I just want to throw out a congratulations to the police chief for graduating from FBI training.
Yes. All right, all right. Nothing? Okay.
Commissioner Grunder has nothing, so I'm just
Yes.
going to go right ahead. Thomas, I don't want you to get up because you've obviously got something going on with your knee there. I had a question for you. At the last meeting, we were talking about water quality and people having questions, and I know that one of the things, when I go down to Williston to pull permits, they have in their, right there in their city hall, a little summary sheet of recent analytical data that they would have collected. And I think one of the things, people talk about, we have asbestos in our water. Well, no, we don't. And I think people conflate the fact that we have some areas that have transite pipe, and they automatically conclude we have asbestos in their water. We don't. We test for that. But I think in the absence of data and facts, people will, fall to conjecture and their own assumption. And what I wanted to ask you about was when you get data from the laboratory for drinking water, wastewater, effluent, stormwater, lead and copper, whatever we're analyzing, do they give you electronic data or do they directly upload it to Oculus for you? Okay, because I've seen our annual data report that we have to have up there, but it gives such a small fraction of everything that we analyze for. And I was just wondering that if there was a way, and I'm asking this for me, not for you, that I could compile some of that data for people and give it to you if they had questions, so that there was actual data for them to look at. I mean, this doesn't address people who are at dead ends and they have issues with black stuff in there. That's a different issue. But I'm sure we sample at so many different points that people probably don't realize. Right. Well, I don't want you to. I don't know, I mean, I can go to Oculus and I can find stuff, but it's really pretty cumbersome. It just is. Because there's so, right. And I think, the wastewater effluent, the discharge that's going to the spray field, that's important to people who are living around the spray field. And I think if we had actual data, look how clean this stuff is. I think that would go a long way to dispelling rumor or conjecture. And I would love to help do that for you. I don't want you to do stuff, but I wanted to run that by everybody because I think there is a lot of rumor out there that's just, our water that comes out of the ground is beautiful. So, I think that's one of the things that I might be able to help people to understand a little bit better. I think you have enough to do, but. No, I understand. That's why I'm bringing it up here. No, absolutely.
These discussions, you can call my office and I can set up a meeting with Thomas, me, and you, and we can go over it so we can determine what's appropriate for him to be working on.
Well, I don't want to ask him to do anything. I don't want to add anything to his plate at all. No, I don't want to add anything. You've got enough to do. And I don't know what would be the least resistant path forward. I just know that we have so much data that people really don't understand how much we actually are doing. So, okay, thank you.
The only thing I'm going to throw out here is I saw some noise on Facebook about the light at 340. I did a little following up on that because I had been told last year that the traffic study warranted a light and it would be budgeted in this fiscal year and it would happen in this fiscal year. And what I've learned is that is not DOT's intention, and they have no intention to put a light there right now. So discussions, I guess, are going back and forth between our staff, and I would encourage our staff to continue to educate them, because a traffic study done in June on a Thursday doesn't really represent the issues we're dealing with there or what's happened since 2021. So please, staff, if the city manager allows you time for that, I would encourage you to stay all over that. And if the commission can help, I think we would all be willing to help push that forward.
And they did say the study is confirmed for one. County, they don't want to participate. And Chief Shepherd has gave us all the information of all accidents that has happened. And I forgot how many they were. There was a whole pile of, we did forward all that information to them. So they're still in the process of looking into it. As of this week, I talked to DOT manager. And so we are still working on it.
Okay, I appreciate that, because the data that I saw talked about the lack of accidents, not to mention we removed, am I correct? We removed a fire hydrant from that intersection because it had been hit so many times and dropped our water pressure. So, yeah.
thank you as I always do. I appreciate everything that you do. And with that, I will entertain